sign in. Ben's going to take it from here. I got to go to a meeting, but he'll take it from here and enjoy. So thanks for coming.
All right. Just so you guys all know, I'm Facebook living this to my EMT class in Warsaw. It's a closed group. There's like 19 in there, so they are. But ultimately, it will get put on video, hopefully, somewhere online for more people to watch. So just so you know that, for whatever comments you want to make. But I want to thank you guys for coming too. I had no idea how many people would come, and I'm just excited, to see a lot of faces I know. And some things I got to tell you about me though that you need to know about me. Number one, I only have 1.5 feet. So if I'm not leaning against something or sitting down on a table, which I do a lot now, I have to keep moving. I'm like a guy with Parkinson's, because otherwise I'm a weeble wobble. I will fall over or like that. Or I'm like a shark. If I stop moving, I'll sink to the bottom and die. So I either move around a lot or I sit somewhere. So you have to know that. Also, I like the sound of my own voice. Now that could be good for you if you like to listen to somebody talk, or it could be really bad for you because I could keep you here for the rest of the night. Now I won't do that, but because of the little issue that I have going with my foot, as in it's getting littler like every year. Started out a pinky toe amputation a year and a half ago, and now it's half a foot is gone, and so it's getting littler every year. But because of that, I've been working more into training and education. A lot of us in EMS go to be nurses, we go to be PAs, some go to be doctors, or you go do something totally different, like sell cars or start a business and make millions of dollars. But for me, it just seems to always have been about passing what I know down to the next generation. And so teaching is what I'm starting to get to do a little bit more. And there's a phrase that I live by, and if you might have saw it on Facebook, and I just want to share it with you because it just defines who I am and what I'm about. And it actually comes from the Bible, and it's not going to be a Bible talk, don't worry. But there's a part of this phrase, it's Isaiah, I think it's 65:24, I always forget the verse. But it says, before they call, I will answer. And that is what you guys are doing sitting here tonight. And there goes the call. So before that hypothermia call, or that cold water drowning call comes in, you are answering that call right here by sitting in this training. And that's what drives me. It's what drives myself, because when I go to trainings and I travel on my own dime, my own gas, my own food, to go to places to learn more than what I can get here in Northeast Indiana. And so it means a lot to me, and I also want to convey that to you guys. So I'm a full-time paramedic for Lutheran EMS. I cut my teeth in Fort Wayne for almost 20 years, and like old medics that go off to ride off into the sunset, we get further and further away from the big city. So I went to MICU for about a year, up to LaGrange, to Whitley County, totally about 5 years with Parkview, and then I went even further out, and now I'm working Warsaw, Leesburg, Milford. Is what I do full-time. I'm also part-time at Northeast Fire and EMS, Leo Grable, which is where I got my start in 1992, and I have always, my heart has always been the heart of a volunteer, in that community. I love that community. So I'm still up there as a paramedic, part-time, and now part-time New Haven, Adams Township, doing some training, and hopefully at some point we'll eventually get on an ambulance. So that's who I am. And so now we're going to talk about cold water drowning and hypothermia. And I told Doug, I said, this isn't going to go 2 hours. I mean, there's a lot of meat in hypothermia and cold water drowning, but it's not a very big bone. So there is a lot of information, but you get through it, and then that's it. It happens in the winter. Winter's 3 months out of the year. So we'll go through this. I got some insights though that I do want to share with you, and hopefully you guys will get a little something out of it. For my Facebook people, for my class, if any of them are joining, yes, I know the phone is crooked. My, I forgot my main, yeah, a couple are on there. I forgot my main tripod at Warsaw, the EMT class, so I'm using my backup. My backup is extremely cheap and feeble and will probably be replaced after tonight. All right, so let's kick this off. Cold water drowning and hypothermia. We're going to start with hypothermia. Here is our local protocol if you are Allen County, and actually outside Allen County. If you're using Northeast Allen County protocols, this is right off of my phone app. So for hypothermia, consider aeromedical transport. This is general. Patients who are severely hypothermic may require cardiopulmonary bypass. So these people in the rewarming process are going to probably get put on ECMO or some sort of bypass. And so they've got to, number one, go to a facility that can do that. Lutheran and Parkview Regional can do ECMO here locally. BLS, handle patient gently. That's actually for everyone. Initiate rewarming techniques. The BLS level, blankets, heat on full blast at the back of your truck. If pulseless and apneic, start CCR. Defibrillate only once using an AED. And we'll talk a little bit more about why basically electricity in a cold heart is not effective. Our protocol, you can do one shock, and then after that, it's not going to be effective. Medications actually are not really that effective either. And so the key is good CPR. Good circulation of blood, oxygenated blood, to try to save this person. At the advanced level, IV warmed normal saline, a liter if available. So if you have warmers on your truck, bag of saline out of your warming platform or cabinet, run them a liter of fluid. And then at the paramedic level, if core temperature is less than 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, if they're pulseless and in VFib or VTAC, defibrillate only once. Pretty much sounds like the BLS order, right? They just add a few more little fancy words, but we're going to shock them once. Whether you're basic or a fancy paramedic, you're going to shock them once. Administer one round of ACLS medications per appropriate protocol. And basically that would be a round of epi. For drowning, I put this one up there too because we're talking about cold water drowning, but drowning in general. C-spine, routine C-spine not necessary unless history of diving, water slide, signs of injury, or signs of alcohol intoxication. In the wintertime, probably not going to have signs of diving. So in theory, probably not going to have to worry about that in the winter. But I'm going to show you a couple things that will make you think about hypothermia or cold water drowning outside of winter. And we'll get to that in just a second. Patient who is submerged for 1 hour or less is pulseless and apneic. Oh, and is pulseless and apneic, shall be resuscitated. So here's the thing. Number one, how do you know if they've been underwater for an hour or less? If you can truly determine that they've been underwater for an hour or less, then you are to resuscitate them. And then there's another point in here later coming up. They're not dead until they're warm and dead, but we'll give you the temperature range for that. BLS, check for a pulse. If absent and patient's apneic, begin CPR and apply an AED. Advise, and remember, this is drowning in general, not necessarily cold water drowning. We're going to put the cold water to it, but in this case, AED is necessary because you have a cardiac arrest in the setting of a drowning. Advise medical control of the situation as soon as possible. Paramedic, secure airway per standing order. Care should be used during endotracheal attempts as it may induce ventricular fibrillation. If hypothermic, treat arrhythmias and absence of rhythm per specific protocols. However, give only one round of drugs before contacting medical control. So hypothermia, what are we talking about when we talk about hypothermia? Unintentional drop in body temperature below 35 degrees Celsius, 95 degrees Fahrenheit. The first thing that I want you to know, and the thing that I talk about with my EMTs, is the body is an amazing machine, an amazing device, an amazing thing. But its window of homeostasis, which is the balance of life between everything working right and everything functioning as it should, that window is actually very small. the normal pH for the blood is 7.35 to 7.45. At under 7.2, 1/10 of a percent down at 7.2, you are in a lethal acidosis, potentially. And that's significant. I don't know about you, but I run about 96.2 oral temperature on any given day. I mean, I'm just kind of generally always cold a little bit. And my diabetes actually has some stuff to do with that. So shivering begins at 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So if your patient is shivering, they're hypothermic. They're cold. How often do you pull somebody into your ambulance from a car wreck and it took you, by the time they called 911 and you got on scene, took you 6-7 minutes to get there, took you 10 minutes to cut them out. They're going almost 20 minutes out in the cold. How many of our patients are shivering? They all are. And so these guys are getting cold very quickly in a very narrow window of homeostasis of opportunity. So in essence, that shivering is the first sign that you're going to see that your patient needs some sort of active rewarming. Now, it might just be cranking up the truck, giving them a blanket, but they're getting cold. So here's our levels that we are defining. Oh, and by the way, one thing I forgot. I didn't cite all the references, but this whole PowerPoint is researched on the internet. So this isn't my amazing knowledge, which actually isn't all that amazing. This is the fact that I can sit down and know how to use Google. So I just got to put that out there. So this isn't my stuff. Well, maybe a couple things are mine, but not a lot of it. So anyway, mild, and for whatever reason, I have no idea why we are so in love with Celsius, but everything is in Celsius. So, in parentheses, I put the Fahrenheit because I am of the old school that English, metric, whatever, I'm going to go with what I grew up on. And so thanks to Siri, hey Siri, what is 32 degrees Celsius? So there was a lot of hey Siri for this presentation. But mild hypothermia, 32 degrees Celsius to 35, which is 89.6, and that's cold, by the way. I mean, that's a little far away from 98.6 or whatever our normal is. So that's cold to 95. So if your patient's shivering, they are already mildly hypothermic. And so many of our patients are this way. Moderate hypothermia, 28 degrees to 32, so it's 82.4 to 89.6. Severe hypothermia, 20 to 28, which is 68 degrees Fahrenheit to 82.4. And profound hypothermia is below 20 Celsius. According to the internet, the coldest known survivor, 13.7 degrees Celsius, 56.7 degrees. That's pretty cold. But here's the question that I have for all of you guys. Assuming that you're working in an ambulance, are all of you on an ambulance, or are some people in-house, like in a hospital? Everyone on an ambulance? Okay. How are you going to get a core body temperature? I know how I'm supposed to do it, and guess what? It ain't happening. Okay? Rectal or a Foley temp, and I ain't doing either of those. So, how do we get a core body temperature? Well, on the ambulance, we can't necessarily get a core body temperature. And so the Swiss came up with this system because, mountains, Himalayas, lots of snow, people avalanche, they get cold a lot. So they came up with this non-body temperature system, which I thought was pretty cool. And so again, hashtag, not my stuff, took it from the internet, but I thought that it would just help make us think, because all of us are on ambulance and we all have oral thermometers, and we'll do an axillary, right? Those are not core body temps. So HT1, clear consciousness with shivering. That's our mild hypothermia. Impaired consciousness without shivering. So when they get so cold that they can't, that they're not shivering, because the body is already starting to slow itself down and is already affected in how it can produce heat, that's bad. They're in trouble. So no shivering. HT3, unconsciousness. HT4, apparent death. And it addresses this here in a second down below here. And then HT5, irreversible hypothermia. So the first three grades correlate roughly to the mild, moderate, severe that we just went over. HT4 is an interval of 24 to 28 degrees. Defined apparent death because historically people retrieved from frozen lakes with this sort of temperature have been asystolic and yet went on to make a reasonable neurological recovery. And I'm gonna hit on this in just a little bit about how hypothermia technically can be a good thing, but it can technically be a bad thing. Are you a good witch or a bad witch? Well, we'll find out in a second. But the real death, quote unquote, is HT5. It's irreversible hypothermia below 13.7. Basically, you are not going to survive that event. So how do we lose heat? Now, we know when we talk about kids that they lose all their heat through their head, right? The biggest part of them, and they lose a lot of heat through their head. And we talk about kids having a hard time keeping them warm. Because what else? They also don't have the fat stores that we have to try to help conserve that heat. 90% of our heat loss happens through our skin. Our skin is the biggest system that we have. It is the biggest part of us. Now, if you're a paramedic, it's probably actually not your skin, it's probably actually your head. But besides that, the skin is where we're losing all of our heat. 90% of your heat comes out through your skin. Guess where the rest of it comes out of? Right here. You blow it away. You exhale your heat. And that's where the rest of it comes out. So, but here's the problem. Cold water exposure is due to being immersed in cold water, that heat loss is 25% higher. So you jump into the water on a day that is 70 degrees outside. And you're like, oh man, you know, it's been winter for so long and now it's the first warm day, let's go swimming. You jump in the pond. You are losing heat faster than what you think. It feels warm, but your water is not warm. And we'll talk actually about that in a second here too. So how do we produce the heat in our body? Well, we have always been told that we produce it by shivering, and that is true. Amazingly, your mechanism of shivering creates and produces a lot of heat. But actually, the two organs of your body that produce most of your heat are your heart and your liver. Now, why do you think your heart and your liver would be producing most of your heat? What if you have an engine, if it's sitting idle, your temperature's like, nice and, you're at 500 RPM, your temperature's in the C, right? In the low range. But then that engine starts working and you build heat as a byproduct, right? Well, in the body, it's the same thing. What in the body is working harder than basically anything else? Well, your heart, which is beating nonstop forever, forever that you're alive, and your liver, because what does your liver do for your body? It's your main filter for the blood. All your blood goes through your spleen. Your spleen filters all your blood, but it's like, it's like this big. Okay, it's just sitting right here, kind of up under your diaphragm and behind your beside your pancreas. Your kidneys, all your blood goes through your kidneys, but again, they're this big, sitting right up here. But look, how big is your liver? Your liver covers your entire right upper quadrant. All your blood goes through your liver, and most of your filtration goes through your liver. And so these things, as a byproduct, are producing a lot of heat. So we produce our heat internally by most of it through the activity of the heart and liver. Now remember, we're losing it through our skin, but we're producing it on the inside, here and here. But here's where we kind of get the, are you a good witch or a bad witch thing. So these organs produce less heat as the body cools down, in what has caused a protective shutdown of the body. So you get cold, and for a time, things are speeding up because the body is trying to compensate for this event that is throwing it out of happiness. So my body's not happy anymore. I'm out of homeostasis. And so we're going to try to compensate for that. So our heart beats faster. We breathe a little faster. But ultimately, everything's going to slow down. Your heartbeat will slow down. Your breathing will ultimately slow down. Your brain function will slow down. Now, this can be a good thing when we're trying to keep our brain neurologically intact, right? So if our brain doesn't need as much oxygen to live, then because it's getting really, really cold, then we in essence can save brain tissue. And this is how these kids, the perfect scenario. It was really, really cold. They were apparently really, really healthy, and they were found in just enough time that there are kids out there that, every once in a while that will fall into the lake or whatever and have been recovered, and they recover neurologically intact. But here is the bad thing about these things. As everything slows down, you can't stay that way. So yeah, I can slow my brain down to keep things fairly stable, to buy me time. But the problem is, if I'm not, think about the metabolism of the body. Think about the physiology, about how the body works. If I'm not breathing very fast, why do we breathe? Why do we breathe? Anybody know that?
So you get oxygen?
The common thought is because we need oxygen.
So you can blow off carbon
But it's to blow off carbon dioxide. I don't breathe because I need oxygen. I breathe because the oxygen that I'm using and the cells in my body that are using that oxygen are producing waste. And that waste has got to get out of me. That's what makes my blood acid. That's what makes me go out of what we call aerobic metabolism. So I've got to blow that CO2 off. And if I can't blow the CO2 off, my kidneys will try to help me out. So here's the problem. When I start breathing slower, even though I have less demand for oxygen, I still have a demand for energy. And so I'm still producing waste products, but now I don't have the means to buffer or get rid of it. And so it's going to build up in my blood. So I get a decrease of oxygen, I get an increase of acidosis, and there lies the fatalityness of what the situation that we're dealing with. That acid is bad for my brain, especially bad for the brain, but it's bad for the other cells of my body also. They can't live in an acidotic state for a very long time. And so that's why it's, are you a good witch or a bad witch? Hypothermia can be good for me to get really cold, to try to preserve my life, my brain function, but if it goes too long, it becomes counter-effective, and then I start getting into big problems. All right, so this is what I was talking about. Hypothermia protects vital organs during ischemia. So ischemia is lack of oxygen, so that means that I have a lack of oxygen going on in my brain or anywhere in my body. And so hypothermia protects me from that because my brain slows down and my brain doesn't need that much oxygen in that colder state. So that can be a good thing. But here are the problems. Does the good outweigh the bad? And I will argue that it doesn't. In fact, the internet says the key to survival in this whole scenario is prevention. Don't jump in the water to begin with. Okay? Don't fall through the ice to begin with. Because ultimately, the guaranteed way to survive is to not be in a hypothermic state. That's what these articles said. And so here's the bad thing. Hypothermia protects the vital organs during ischemia, a lack or decrease of oxygen, but can lead to cardiac arrest and increased bleeding. Maintain body heat with shock. So if one thing that it said in our protocol, and I've actually experienced in real life with a patient, sad to say, they were alive until I lifted him off the ground on the spine board, and his eyes went up, and he went to VFib, and that was it. We never got him back. You got to treat these guys carefully because they become extremely fragile. Their hearts become extremely fragile. And just literally the motion of lifting him off, and we were careful, but we lifted him off the ground with our spine board, and he arrested right there. And it's like, I mean, we knew it was going to happen. There was nothing we could do about it. So they're very, very prone to VFib. And here again, now this is the problem, like we said before. They're in VFib. What do you do for VFib? You shock it. Not if the heart's cold. It's not effective. We give it epi. Not if the heart's cold. Basically, what you do is good CPR, airway, and get them oxygenated, and circulate oxygen to the body to preserve and keep that brain alive, and then get them someplace where they can get rewarmed. So the key is to try to keep them out of VFib. Now, what do we know about shock? What is the one thing that we're always telling about shock? that BLS can do, that my students can do. The lay people do it all the time. You come up to a 26, and what do you find? A patient sitting on at the side of the road, and somebody put their coat over them. Somebody put a blanket over them to keep them warm. You were always told to keep them warm, right? That's what you're told. To prevent shock, keep them warm. Were you ever told why? No. Probably not. Okay? And this is what I tell my EMT students is the goal. I can tell you, and this is what I've told them is, I can tell you, you have chest pain, give them aspirin. Got chest pain? Give them aspirin. Oh, you're 2 years old, your chest hurts? Give you aspirin. And you'll be wrong 50% of the time. Okay? What I want them to know, just like I want you guys to know, I want you to know why you're giving aspirin. Because then, if you're giving it for the right reasons, they take 10 of our peers across the country, put them up in a stand. Lawyer says, okay, this guy was 48 years old. He had chest pain. It had pressure. It was moving to the left shoulder. And this guy gave him aspirin, and the family sued him because they said he was wrong. And 9 out of those 10 EMTs or paramedics, unless they're a moron, will say, I would have done the same thing. He ain't wrong. The family's wrong. Case closed. Okay, so that's why we're giving aspirin. I want you to know why. You are being told to cover people with a blanket to keep them warm. Well, here's the why. Okay? Now in hemorrhagic shock, okay, they ruptured their spleen and they're bleeding to death internally. You know they are. They're sick, they're pale, their heart's beating fast, they look like they're already dead, and you're trying to hurry to get them to the hospital. And now we're saying, okay, yeah, do your IVs and drive fast and oxygen or whatever, but keep them warm. Why? Because the cold temperature, if the body is cold, it blocks the body's ability to clot. We call it coagulopathy. I can't even say the word, but there it is up there. Coagulopathy. Okay? It blocks the body's ability to clot. So in shock, if you're getting cold, you're not going to naturally clot to stop yourself from bleeding. You're going to bleed more. Okay? Because what you are doing, what it says up here, is hypothermia is especially dangerous in trauma because a major contributing factor to hypothermia is coagulopathy, failure of fibrinogen synthesis. So synthesis is like we're trying to create something. So I get a cut in the body. Okay? Immediately, the clotting mechanism is activated. Cells, platelets, and go to that spot and start forming a scab to get that cut to stop bleeding. Part of that process is the blood will get fibrous. And like if you ever, I don't know if you ever gotten bored and picked one of your scabs and then kind of like pulled it apart. And it looks like string. It's fibrous. Okay? It's not that gross. It's curiosity. But that's the fibrinogen that is creating that fiber to help get your blood to clot, to get that to scab over. Not only to help you stop bleeding, but to also try to get you to not get an infection. See, the body is trying to save itself and heal itself. But the problem is that's a slow process. And you can bleed to death, depending on where you're cut, in about 3 to 6 minutes, depending on where you're cut. So when you get cold, in fact, I heard a stat for like a trauma conference. It was like for every minute that somebody is under like 95 degrees or shivers or something, it increases their percent of dying by whatever, they always have those kind of numbers. But that is what's happening. Hypothermia decreases the rate of thrombin formation, suggesting that this factor, tissue factor pathway, gets affected. So when somebody has a problem clotting, there are different factors, and I don't know all the factor numbers. There's like that one I think is factor 7A, and I think there's like there's like a factor 8, and there's like a vitamin K thing. But there's several of these different factors that get the body to clot. And so our anticoagulants like Coumadin, and then there's like Xarelto and Plavix, they work on these different factors to make one or the other, or two of them, or whatever, block the clotting process, so that people with clot problems, or heart disease or stroke or whatever, their blood can be quote unquote thin. I hate saying the blood is thin, but technically that's what it is. So cold is blocking all this from happening, okay? Which is a problem in the presence of trauma. And this has nothing to do with it being 20 degrees outside. Okay, I think it was down at the state, it was Dr. Kaufman, I think, that talked about it, or somebody down there at a conference I went to. But they had a medic from Afghanistan that was flying Blackhawks with trauma victims to the hospital. It was like 110 to 120 on the desert floor, 140 in their helicopter. And these people were hitting the doors of their ER cold. Hypothermic, which would be under 95 degrees. And it's 140 in the vehicle they just came out of. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I'm all about saving my patient, and I'm down with, keeping you warm, but it ain't going to get to 140 in that truck. I'm opening a window. Man, I'm turning on a fan. But I'll make it 90. I mean, I'll sweat my butt off. I'll take my vest off. I won't take my shirt off, but I will strip down to my t-shirt or whatever to make it hot, like I got a baby or something that I'm taking to Lutheran or whatever. But it ain't going to get to 140. And these guys are in Afghanistan, 140 in their chopper, and those guys are hitting the doors cold. So you have a fight. Keep that in the back of your mind. It's not about the fact that it's 20 degrees outside and they put their car around a tree and they're sitting in that car for 20 minutes. Yeah, we know they're cold then. I mean, heck, my 12-year-old will tell you that he's cold. Put a blanket on him, Dad. I mean, that's just a given. But what about when it's 90 outside and he's been sitting in that car for 20 minutes and is still pinned, and you have heat on him, and for whatever reason, he is still losing 90% of his heat through his skin. So think about that. Keep that in the back of your mind about why and what the presence of cold does to clotting. Because another interesting thing is as your temperature gets colder, your blood also gets thicker and more viscous. So if you're not cut, which is a good thing, you're not bleeding, which is a good thing, but if you're really cold, your blood isn't flowing well. So that creates a whole myriad of other problems, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So what are our populations of risk? Well, the elderly, obviously. I mean, why the elderly? They're frail. They have a lot of comorbidities. They're diabetic. They have heart disease. They might be on oxygen, but they just took it off to run to the mailbox to get their mail. They slipped and fell on the ice, and you get there, they weren't found for 20 minutes, so they're cold. They're hypoxic because they don't have their O2, and maybe they have a broken leg. I mean, those people they're going to die, aren't they? I mean, they're just, unfortunately, I'm sorry, we're going to do the best we can, but you're just going to be in trouble. Infants. Well, they're vulnerable, and they toddle themselves out to the sidewalk, and they can't say, oh gee, my body is cold, I'm going to go inside now. They can't process that information. Plus, they do have more fat stores, but what? They have a big head, and it doesn't say paramedic on their shirt, and all this heat is leaving them. So they are potentially vulnerable. And children, because of the same reason, they don't process that it's time to come inside because they're cold. Oh, Mom. And they will stay out until they turn into a block of ice. People with mental illness. Well, why are they at risk? Well, for the same reason that they don't take their medicines. Oh, I feel good. I don't need the meds that make me feel good, so they quit taking their meds. Then they have a mental illness crisis. Well, it could be the same. That's not snow out there. That's pixie dust. Those are fluffy clouds. It's the Marshmallow Man. It's whatever. And so they go out running out in their underwear, or they run out without a coat, and they'll play out there too until they die because of the mental illness. So they're vulnerable. People are outdoors for an extended period of time. Well, if you're a healthy individual, this might not be as big of a problem because you're going to dress warm. You're going to tolerate the warm better. But what if you're homeless? What if you're outside every night and, yeah, you're wearing a jacket, but you don't have good clothing to keep you warm, and you don't have good health care because you don't have insurance, so you're not taking your blood pressure med, you're not getting your insulin, and oh, by the way, you actually haven't eaten in a day and a half. And so now tonight, it's going to be wind chill of 5 below zero. Okay, this is a problem. Oh, and then we can't forget our alcoholics. Again, match that with homelessness, and match that with mental illness, because what do we know about in America? 50% or more of our homeless are also have mental illness, And most of them are basically alcoholics. And I'm not trying to talk down about them. That's just the fact. That's just the way it is. And so add that with diabetes that's out of control, and they're dead. I don't know how they survive a winter. I mean, we run in Fort Wayne to these people living under the bridges, and I found out an area I had no idea. We over there, right by Three Rivers Apartments. You got Clay Street comes in, and right past Station 1, and then there's like you make a curve, and there's a bridge right there. Well, there's like a path. There's like weeds and some trees, and I had driven by that for most of my career, and I had a run, and we had the address, and we're like, there's a bridge there. What the world are they talking about? There's somebody with chest pain, and it was a homeless person. And there was a homeless guy waiting on the street, and we stopped the ambulance, and they, like, back here, they take us through this walk path into an entire homeless city, a camp city. I am like, I had no idea.
That was trash back there, wasn't it?
That was what?
Trash.
It was trashed?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, there's tents, and they got campfire, and there's wrappers everywhere, and holy cow, I had no idea it even existed. But those people, I don't know how they survive a winter or a night. I mean, if I was homeless, man, I would take whatever strength I had left to walk, and I would start heading south. I don't need to get to Florida. I just need to get to like southern Tennessee, and it'll be 40 degrees. I'll make it. So some other risk factors, and this doesn't again necessarily equate to it being 20 degrees outside. Hypoadrenalism. So when you're cold, like you have any insult to the body, what happens? You either fight to live or run away to fight another day, right? Your fight or flight kicks in. What kicks in your fight or flight? Adrenaline. Where do you get adrenaline? From your adrenal glands. I was waiting for somebody to say, well, a paramedic injects it in my wrist or in my arm or in my shoulder. But yeah, your adrenal glands. We always talk about the kidneys. The kidneys. On top of the kidneys are our adrenal glands that pump out that epi for us, that fight or flight. So if I have a problem with that process and my body's getting cold, and what's the compensation mechanism we just talked about before everything slows down? Everything speeds up. The body is trying to save itself. But oh no, I'm not getting kicked in the butt with a nice little dose of epi because my adrenals are malfunctioned for whatever genetic reason. And now I've got a problem. I'm going to get cold with no way to fix myself, to buy myself that small little window of time for someone to come help me. Hypothyroidism. Well, here again, thyroid is part of your metabolism, which is part of weight control. And everybody that's overweight, and me included, I have low thyroid. Hey, that's why I'm overweight. Okay, you just keep telling us that. So we can leave the bag of Hershey's Chocolate Kisses home. We don't have to take those with us to the hospital, right? It's because of your thyroid, not because of the Hershey's chocolate. Anyway, but your thyroid regulates temperature. If you have hyperthyroidism, you will always run with a low, well, not always, but a lot of time, you will run with a low-grade fever. Your fever at any given time will probably be in the 99 range. You'll always be hot flashes or whatever. You will go outside without a coat. You'll be the guy that doesn't wear a coat until after Christmas or something. Hypothyroidism is the other way around. You are going to be wearing a coat in the middle of July, and we're going to all think you're insane. But no, you're not insane. You're cold. Kidney failure. If any of you have ever been to a dialysis center, or the next time you go, look and see how many of those people are wearing sweaters and coats. Okay? Your kidney failure patients are always cold. In fact, cold in reference to diabetes and thyroid or these other things, they also are going to check your kidney function. Because your kidney function, the temperature of your body, is correlated to how well your kidneys are working. So our dialysis patients are always cold. And then look at this. Remember what we said about shivering? When do you shiver? At 95 or below, exactly. So, I'm a quadriplegic. I'm laying in an apartment. I have my stick for my mouth, and I can do my TV, and I can call and stuff. And I have a home health care person, comes in the morning to take care of me, comes in the evening to take care of me. And during the day, I'm by myself. Okay? We have patients like that we're used to in Fort Wayne. One of them was the bane of our existence. He died a few years ago, but we ran on him for years. And so I'm in that scenario. I don't have 24-hour care. and my power fails. Or for whatever reason, I couldn't afford to pay my heat bill, and my heat gets shut off. And now it's 20 degrees outside. Wind chill is 5 above 0. It's noon, and my home health care person will be there at 6 o'clock to help me get ready for bed and help me make supper or whatever. And I'm going to go 6 hours, and I'm going to start getting cold. Not severely hypothermic. I'm not going to get down to 80 degrees, but what is going to happen? I'm going to hit 95, and I'm just going to lay there. I'll start shaking like a leaf, but the quadriplegic's just going to lay there. And he's going to hit 93, then he's going to hit 91, then he's going to hit 89, and then he's going to be in trouble. He's not going to shiver. So his heat mechanism, the one that is the first thing that rings the alarm bell that tells him that he's getting cold, is not there because he's a quad. And so, and then stroke also. You affect the brain and the mechanism to control body temperature. You get paralyzed on one side of your body, stroke, things that can impair shivering. So things that we don't maybe necessarily think about on any given day, but if you come into these situations in your runs that you go on, hopefully something will ring in the back of your head that, he's a dialysis patient. That's why he's got a sweater on and it's April. And it's 70 degrees outside because he's cold. So, other causes of hypothermia not related to cold water temperature. Diabetes, we talked about that with the kidneys a little bit. Thyroid, we talked about that. Medications or illegal drugs or alcohol. And I am trying, as I become an instructor and as people make fun of me in my instructing style, I am trying not to tell as many stories. But I've got to tell this one because it is just a darn good story. So we get called for 2 unconscious parties, possibly signal 32. It's a man and a girlfriend, and they had actually stolen drugs from Lutheran twice. And they had raided a crash cart at Lutheran in the ER two days earlier than this. So they had been a chronic problem at Lutheran. Uncle comes to the trailer to find them, or to check on them because they haven't answered in a day or two. And he gets there and he's like, they're not moving, they're not responding, I think they're both dead. So I get there, and I get there. My partner and I got there. And so we knew we had 2 dead people, 2 arrests, 2 something. So I go to the guy laying on the couch. He is stiff as a board. He's been dead at least a day. My partner goes to the lady who's laying on the floor. And she's stiff as a board and has probably been dead for a day. Except she ain't dead. And so I'm like, my guy's dead. What do you got? And she's like getting ready to try to intubate this girl. I'm like, what are you doing? I get down and I'm kind of assessing. I'm like, this woman's rigged. She's ice cold. I mean, ice cold. She's dead. She's like, no, she's not dead. She's trying to breathe. She has a heart rate. She had put her on the monitor. I'm like, no freaking way. So we get an IV. We work her, back, intubate her. Basically, that's all we did. We intubate her back here, got her to Lutheran. Her core body temp was 78 degrees. Her kidneys were done. They were toast. And she tested positive for everything under the sun, and she died 10 hours later. They tried to do some rewarming, but they were like, she's going to die. I mean, she was already dead. She just didn't quite know it yet. But it wasn't because of the temperature of the trailer. It was because of the narcotics and whatever other meds she got out of the crash cart, which would be epiatropine, maybe some bicarb, that killed her kidneys. And so you may find these scenarios outside of true hypothermia in the presence of cold temperature, but still have a cold patient. And so just an example of something to think about outside of the norm. Yes?
In those situations, and you get there and the patient is shivering, is there another reason why they would be shivering, or it's always hypothermia?
Well, no, it could be another reason. It could be a narcotic reason. They're amped up on meth or amphetamine, and so they're not necessarily shivering, but they're tremors. They're muscle tremors. Could be Parkinson's and they muscle tremor. Could be seizures. They could be having not a grand mal seizure, but maybe I can't think of the other words right now. Got me on the spot. See, I'm not really as smart as I try to make people think I am, but there's certain seizures that affect one side of the body, an arm or something. So it could appear to be shivering, but if it's true shivering, as in, the body is trying to generate heat, it's because the body has said, I am cold. My temp is 95 and I need to get warmer. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so this slide is crazy, busy, weird. But there's some numbers here that I thought were cool, and so that's why I brought it up. But I have to go to the wall to read it because it's too small even for me. So here is our Celsius marks. And so I marked some regular temps to help us English folk. So 35 degrees Celsius is 95, which is where you start shivering. 89.6 is 32, which is mild hypothermia, right? 32 to 35, mild hypothermia. 28 is 82.4. And then 75.2, that's 24. And 68 is 20, which remember, below 20 degrees Celsius was severe hypothermia, right? Severe or, well, profound, okay. As a word like really bad. That's really bad. What was wrong, Doc? I don't know, man. It's really bad. They're just like really cold. And then basically the coldest that anybody ever lived was like, what was it, like 56 or 7 or something. But 10 degrees Celsius is 50. But here are some of the things I wanted to point out with this. At 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius, so profoundly cold, severely cold, probably irreversibly cold, no respiratory drive response to hypoxia or hypercapnia. So if your brain is still functioning, it is saying to the rest of you, it's saying to your lungs, it's saying to your diaphragm, we have too much acid, we have too much carbon dioxide, we don't have enough oxygen, you need to breathe. Diaphragm, you need to make the lungs bigger, make the pressure change, make air go into us, and give me a breath. And the diaphragm says, are you freaking kidding me? It is like 10 degrees outside, my body is 68 degrees, I am cold, and I'm too cold, I cannot breathe. So you will not breathe, you will basically be in a rest at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, another thing, at this level, your cardiac output is 20%. So you have shut down. So remember, it's the good versus the bad. Yes, it's good that your brain and heart don't need as much oxygen, but you're still producing waste products that are not being expelled or gotten rid of. And that's a bad thing. All right. But up here, more was something that we can work with. Okay? So you get a really cold person. Maybe they came out of a pond. They might be in that 89, 80, 88 degrees Fahrenheit. And at this level, your cardiac output at 82 degrees, 28 degrees Celsius, moderate, if I'm not mistaken, moderate hypothermia, your cardiac output is 50%. So your cardiac output is cut in half. Okay? At about 89 or so, 82 degrees. Your risk of arrhythmia is increased. Defibrillation has little effect. So here at this level, so that guy that I had that I lifted off the ground, and the story behind him, it was kind of a sad story. He was I don't know if it was muscular dystrophy, MS or something. He's in a wheelchair, lived by himself, and every night ate at some little bar there off of Wallen Road in the Washington Township area. And this was in the news like 15 years ago. You might know the story, I don't know. It had snowed a little bit that night, just a dusting. And he had a wheelchair van. He got out of his wheelchair van. You can see his tracks. He comes out of the wheelchair van. He has a ramp for his wheelchair, no rail. And he missed a little bit on that ramp. The back tire went off and he flipped over into the yard. They said, the newspaper said that he normally eats a late lunch about 7 o'clock and he'll stay there a couple hours. He normally leaves at 9 o'clock. So he was found by the newspaper guy at 5:30 in the morning. So he was out there all night. It was in the 20s, and it's kept snowing a little bit. Not much, but maybe like ½ inch to an inch. And he laid out there all night with his wheelchair actually like on his leg. And he couldn't get up because of his handicaps. And the newspaper guy found him at 5:30 in the morning. Called us. This guy was alive. I mean, he was like not with it. He was actually moaning, but his eyes would open, and he was like really cold. And I was with Steve Ealing, if you know Steve. We put him on the spine board, and I remember we specifically talked to each other. Okay, lift him really slowly. Because this guy, just to even look at him, he's going to go into VFib. And we're like, okay, 1, 2, 3. And we're just really slowly lifting him up. And I actually think it was you get somebody up off the ground, and then you just kind of adjust a little bit. And I think it was in that little adjust that he kind of dropped and then back up, and he went into VFib. And if that wasn't bad enough, then you got to read in the paper the next day about how great of a guy he was, and you couldn't save him. And yeah, I was actually trying to find that newspaper article. I saved that newspaper article. I was trying to find it to show that example. But anyway, so he was moderately hypothermic. Because why do I say moderate? Because he was still moaning, still trying to communicate, and still breathing, even though he laid there all night. And keep that little point in mind, because I'm going to come back to that here in a second about the time. Theoretical limit of neurological survival. Below this temperature, no human brain has fully recovered from hypothermia. And that's that one that was, basically 52 or whatever degrees it was. Up here, back up. Remember when we talked about trauma and being cold? Okay? Fibrinogen synthesis rate is halved at 89.6 degrees. Now, I'm going to say that you have to try to get yourself to 89.6 degrees. Like us right now. If we were like, okay, I want to try to get myself even low end of mildly hypothermic, I would assume that we would have to really try to do that. Like not wear a coat, maybe take our shirt off, stand outside, and get ourselves pretty cold. Okay? Because, think about how often, when was the last time you were under 95 degrees Fahrenheit? Or maybe assuming that you were under 95 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold. 93, if you're 93, you're not going to let yourself get that way. You're going to be like, I'm an idiot. Why did I run out here to get the mail down the lane in just my t-shirt? I got to go put a coat on. You're going to go inside, you're going to drink a cup of hot chocolate, you're going to put your coat on. You're going to warm yourself up. But accidentally, and that's why, the articles always talked about accidental hypothermia. What happens if you accidentally get yourself really cold? Your car breaks down and won't start, so you have no heat. Or you're locked out of your house because the door's closed on you and you left your keys in there. Or you're wrapped around a tree and EMS and fire are trying to get you out. Okay? So here's the problem. You get down there to that 89 degrees, and your ability to clot and your ability to create a scab wound to slow your bleeding has just been reduced by 50%. Okay, you are in real trouble, and that's what we got to think about with our patients, is that you're in real trouble. All right, so digging just a little deeper in what we've talked about. Do you guys need a break? We've been going an hour. You want to take 5? Is that a no? Okay. As much as I love to listen to the sound of my own voice, I am willing to accept that maybe you don't love to hear the sound of my own voice and you just need a break after a little while. But anyway, so endocrine and metabolic, and we've touched on this a little bit. With the decrease in metabolism, remember the engine that makes your body work, your heartbeat, your respiration, the adrenal system, the epi that flows through your body. Metabolism, breaking down of food, okay, for glucose, for energy. All this stuff starts to slow down with the decrease in metabolism. The good part of that, like we've said, decreased oxygen consumption, so that's good. Decreased carbohydrate metabolism and hyperglycemia. So why would you start getting hyperglycemic? Because you're not metabolizing your food. So if I'm decreasing carbohydrate metabolism, that means I'm decreasing the breakdown of that biscuit that I ate and that candy bar. So it's not going to get broken down and turned into glucose that my body can use. It's going to sit in my bloodstream as higher sugar. So these people, in light of all the problems they have, their blood sugar is going up. Decreased drug metabolism and clearance. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. But out of all this, if there's any good news, your electrolytes are not going to change. So you're not going to get high or low potassium, which can affect your heart rhythm. You're not going to probably need to pee more because your sodium is flowing through your kidneys, and the kidneys is making urine to get rid of it. So maybe that will not be happening. Cardiovascular changes. So we've talked about this. Decreased cardiac output and bradycardia. So initially you get faster, then you slow down. Prolonged QT and J-wave. And for the paramedics in the room, we'll show that in a second. Arrhythmias, classic VFib or VTAC. This is the bane of our existence as responders, is that these people are going to get really cold and they're going to go into arrhythmia, and outside of CPR, there's not a lot we can do about it. And then the resistance to the defib, and then vasoconstriction. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second too. And the hematological consequences. So increased hematocrit and blood viscosity. Basically, with the hematocrit, that's dealing with the liver. So here again, your liver is not functioning properly, so the liver enzymes and the ability of the blood to do its thing decreases, and the blood gets thicker. It gets more viscous, just like oil, viscosity that coats pistons so that your engine runs well. Well, the blood, the problem is if that blood starts getting thicker, it's not going to flow through the body as well in this term that we call perfusion. And that's really all that shock is. Hypovolemic shock is inadequate tissue perfusion due to a lack of blood volume and red blood cells. So not enough blood with oxygen, containing oxygen, is getting to my organ to keep my organ alive because of decreased perfusion, circulation, and so I go into shock. Well, in this case, that's the process that's going on. The blood is getting thicker, and so it's not flowing to the organ as well. Along with all the other things that are slowing down, these organs are not getting fed properly. And then respiratory, decreased respiratory rate and sensitivity to carbon dioxide. So we're going to build up to carbon dioxide in our bloodstream. Acid-base balance goes out of whack, and we're going to get a rise in our pH with falling body temperature. All right, so for the paramedics in the room, there was a thing about the drugs, and so I picked some that we have on the truck. And basically what we're talking about with the drugs is, number one, is they have decreased effectiveness on the organ, on the target organ. So number one is the med that you want to give them to do whatever it is you want it to do, it's going to have decreased effect on that cold organ. So epi, not going to be as effective on the heart, amiodarone, all these other drugs. But also, because of the system shut down, because where is our filtration take place? In the liver and in the kidneys, which is why I put gentamicin on there. We don't carry gentamicin, but I put it on there for the kidneys. So the liver function is shutting down, and so what's going to happen if these drugs don't get metabolized? Not only do they not work on the organ because it's cold, but the body can't get rid of them because it's cold. So look at fentanyl. So fentanyl reduces to 75%. So I give somebody fentanyl for pain. So they're like, I still feel it. Oh, well, okay, I'll give you some more. Well, you must really be cold. I still feel the pain, but now the body doesn't get rid of it. It only gets rid of a quarter of what I gave them. 75% of that is still going to sit in the bloodstream and do what fentanyl, they're going to try to do what fentanyl does. Versed, reduced to 1%. So Versed clearance decreases 100-fold if the patient cools below 35 degrees. So 35 degrees Celsius, what is that? That's shivering, right? You can be sitting in this room, you can be a dialysis patient, and you fall and break your leg, and it hurts so bad that fentanyl's not touching you. And if you're like 94 degrees, I'm going to give you that Versed to help sedate you and calm you down. And only 1% of it is going to get metabolized by the body. And the rest of it's going to sit in your system. and do what Versed does, depress respirations, which we already have a problem because they're cold. The kidneys can't get rid of it like it needs to, so it's going to be a problem. Let's look at rocuronium. Rock, for you guys that aren't paramedics, is one of our paralytics. Okay, rocuronium works for anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes. So we in Fort Wayne, I don't even know, New Haven, do you guys carry?
Sucks.
You guys got Sucks, okay. Sucks works for about 8 minutes. Well, that makes sense because how far is New Haven from Randalia? From regional, 8 to 10 minutes, bam, paralyze them, get them tubed, they wake up, give them a little sedation, make them happy, and away you go. I'm in Warsaw. How long does it take me to get to regional? About 50 minutes, well, about 48 minutes, licensed siren. So we carry, in fact, I don't think we even carry Sucks. Sucks is kind of falling out of favor, but we carry Rock. Taking them out of the ER, they got them intubated, got them tubed, got them a little ketamine, make them happy, give them another dose of Rock, and they ain't moving for the entire trip. Okay? But look what happens if they're cold. Okay? The effect decreased by 5 minutes for every 1 degree below 37 degrees Celsius. So that's basically normal body temperature. You're not even hypothermic by our number range, but your the length of the effect of the drug is increased for every degree you are below that. So I'm going to get 10 extra minutes on my 45 minutes if you're at 35, if you're at 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So look, a good dose of Rock may have useful effects for up to 60 minutes. So my med that's supposed to be done in 45 is now going to sit in my system until 60. It's prolonged because the body isn't metabolizing that medication. And then I put gentamicin on there only because of this fact. Gentamicin has nothing to do with the liver. This drug has nothing to do with metabolism at all. This drug is cleared by the kidneys. And you say, well, we haven't really talked a lot about the kidneys. We're talking about liver and the heart and breathing. But this is what it says about that. In a hypothermic patient, glomerular blood flow is greatly reduced, and this decreases the filtration of such drugs. Now, I'm not 100% sure of what all glomerular blood is, except it is a number that I pay attention to every time I get my blood drawn, because when that number hits some magic level, I'm going to be on dialysis. So they measure the glomerular filtration rate for a male at whatever age. Dave would probably know all about it. What's that?
The GFR?
Yeah, the GFR. And according to that number, it tells how well your kidney, one of the numbers, it tells how well your kidneys are functioning. So that's why I put that up there. Not because we carry gentamicin, it's just kind of a fun fact with the knowledge of what we're doing with hypovolemia, or hypothermia. But you also have a medication that you might be transferring on transfer. Now, you guys really don't do a lot of transfers if you're in Allen County as much, unless you're on a MICU or a CCT truck. But I transfer, I mean, that's half of my run volume is transfers. So I could easily have somebody on antibiotic because they're septic and cold septic, which is very bad for the patient. And so they got antibiotics running, and they're cold, and they're maybe intubated, and now we're giving them medicine that's not going to do anything because they're cold, and the body can't get rid of it because they're cold. Okay, these are just really sick people. So that's why I put that one on there. All right, so this is just a slide. Again, it's a really busy slide, but I liked this range up here and listing the stuff that you talk about per the range. And so again, it's too small for you guys to read, but over here at 37, average body temperature. Here at 35, this is our mild hypothermia, shivering, high blood pressure. Because, why is the blood pressure high? They're cold. Everything's slowing down. Heart rate increases though. Exactly. Remember, before it slows down, the heart rate increases. The body constricts blood vessels in the extremities to keep the core warm. That's going to make your blood pressure go up. Vasoconstriction will make your blood pressure go up. And so, we're starting out here just a little bit cold. Then we get to moderate, and here's our temperature range, getting into that 28 to 32 degree range. Amnesia, your brain function is starting to really decrease. You're also getting hypoxic and acidotic, which is also going to decrease your brain function. Frostbite. I kind of left frostbite out of the hypothermia lecture part because it's just kind of a given. I mean, you stay out in the cold, your extremities are going to get cold and they're going to die, and you can just talk about frostbite for almost an entire lecture. And I know that would make all of you guys either leave or want to hang yourself, so I kind of skipped it. Irregular heartbeat and coma. Mercifully, you might go to sleep to kind of help you out of the suffering. And then at that severe hypothermia range, we talked about you quit breathing, your muscles stop functioning, and you die. So, in that, so here's your tachycardia, then you go to bradycardia, then you start getting arrhythmia and fib, your muscles will shiver, and your blood will constrict. All right. So that's basically just an overview of the hypothermia part. Any questions with that? All right, now do you need a break, or are you ready to keep going? Okay, we'll keep going. So drowning, again, it's all the internet, it's none of me, but near drowning, almost drowning, sort of drowning, all those drowning terms they don't use anymore. You either drowning or you're not drowning. And here's the fancy definition of drowning. A process resulting in respiratory impairment from submersion in a liquid medium. So basically your head's underwater, you can't breathe because of that, and so you're drowning. Now, remember when I talked about cold water? Well, here's our definition of warm water and cold water. Water over 20 degrees Celsius, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, is warm water. Water under 68 degrees Fahrenheit is cold water. And all water in Indiana is cold water. Okay? So unless your kid drowned in a heated pool, he is a cold water drowning. If he drowned in a pond, if he drowned in a river, he drowned in a lake, doesn't matter if it's December, doesn't matter if it's July. Okay? All water in Indiana, all natural water in Indiana is cold water. And so here again, what I was talking about. Remember when I was saying it could be 70 degrees outside? And you get into the water and your heat loss increases by 25%. Or, I'm sorry, 25 times. So you're losing heat even though you're like, it's sunny outside, I'm hot, I'm sweating. But whatever's under the water is losing heat. Okay, so here again is our protocol. And I'm not going to read it again, but just to set the stage for what we're talking about, this is the hypothermia one, and this is the drowning one, which basically for cold water drowning, you just put temperature together. You know, they're cold, your stuff isn't going to work. But remember, depending on the time underwater and their body temperature, you may not have a cold, you have a cold water drowning, but you may not have a cold heart that won't get shocked. And so here again, you seek the guidance of medical control. If they've been underwater 10 minutes, they may not have a cold heart. It may still react to defibrillation. And so if that is the case, you would shock them. You would give them medications. You might get, I'll talk about in a second, a baby does what they call a bucket drowning. They fall into a bucket. Incredibly sad. It's not a cold water drowning. Well, the water's cold, but that's basically a hypoxia drowning. They couldn't breathe. Their heart's going to be whatever temperature it was before that event. So here's our 4 phases, though, in reference to cold water drowning. So I'm talking about cold water drowning. And here's the phases of that. So cold shock response, 0 to 2 minutes. So you jump in the water, and immediately it affects your breathing. You get a response based off of cold water hitting your skin called an automatic gasp response. This happens in the first minute. Now here's the problem. You can survive a hypothermia event in cold water, and we'll talk about that in a second. But if you jump in, you dive in, you go underwater, and your skin hits that cold water, you have an automatic response to gasp. and then you suck in air and you stay under. You don't come back up. The key in this first 2 minutes is to control your breathing, because people will tend to panic and hyperventilate. Okay, so you're in the water, you just jumped in, you're going to want to panic, you're going to want to start breathing faster. But what happens when you're breathing faster? You make yourself colder. You're in cold water, losing heat this way, but you're also breathing faster, finishing yourself off. So control your breathing, control your panic, and this is a survivable event. Cold incapacitation, 2 to 30 minutes. Functional disability. So, okay, so we start getting close to that 30 minutes. Okay, you can start to get a little nervous now. This is a bad thing. Okay, this is note to self. I'm in trouble. Vasoconstriction restricts blood flow from extremities to keep the core warm, and so all that blood. You don't need your arms and legs to survive. I mean, we kind of like to keep them. It's kind of handy, but we don't need them. But my brain, my heart, my lungs, they need blood almost constantly to survive. So the body shunts that blood away. So what happens? You're not getting any heat to your extremities. And so when they start getting really cold, and you don't even have to jump in the water to know this, you can just go out and not have gloves on and try to scrape your windshield or try to work in a car wreck scene, and your fingers start to step up, and you're like, you can't do fine motor skills because of your cold fingers. So you ultimately have a loss of movement to your arms and legs and your hands and feet. So without a life jacket, it is almost impossible to stay afloat. So in this phase, at 2 to 30 minutes, the key to survival is to wear a life jacket. Now notice I have not talked about you dying because you're cold. Okay, so keep that in mind. Next, this is phase 3. It's hypothermia. Greater than 30 minutes. It takes approximately 30 minutes for an adult to hypothermia. So your symptoms: shivering, slow, shallow breathing, confusion, drowsiness, slurred speech, and weak pulse. So you have a brief window of time in the water. If you can keep your panic under control, keep your breathing under control. They have a technique that you might have just seen in a swim class of curling yourself up to conserve heat. If you can keep yourself under control, this is a survivable event for a little while. Key here is that you have time to act and you have time to survive. The key is to not panic. And then there's phase 4, post-rescue collapse. Greater than 30 minutes. Occurs just before or at the time of rescue. It's not really understood why. But from what I was reading, these guys get drug up onto the shore. They might get them on a cot, and all of a sudden they just arrest and die. Or they get up in a helicopter, they're trying to fly back, off of the Bering Sea or Strait or whatever, and they just crash and die. They think it's because of an abrupt drop in blood pressure that may cause the final stage of cold water drowning. So our key in this case is to monitor your patient very carefully during the rewarming process. So you're getting blankets on them. You might be getting heat packs in the axilla and groin. If you're a paramedic or advanced EMT, you're giving them warm fluid. But don't just sit back and look at the radio and be like, okay, I got to get to Parkview Channel, and then I got to look at my notes to get his age and his stuff. And while you're not watching your patient, they decide to go belly up and die on you for this phase, which is post-rescue collapse. So, rewarming. We start that process in the field, but we can't really do too good of a job at it because we can only do so much with a blanket and with heat packs with a warm ambulance. Yeah, I can get them starting to warm up. I can even, I've gotten patients that were shivering to not be shivering anymore. But if you got somebody that's come out of a pond or a lake and they've been in there for any period of time, they're going to have to go get actively rewarmed. They might use like a bear hugger where they spend like a few hours in this canvas thing that has heat that gets pumped in to this thing that they're surrounded in. And ultimately, if they're severely hypothermic, like they're in cardiac arrest, they have to have heart-lung bypass and actively get rewarmed by taking their blood out of their body, put oxygen in it, make it warm, and then put it back into them. Basically like an ECMO or a heart-lung bypass. So, but until that process, remember our protocol. If they've been under an hour or less, we work them. And they will continue to be worked until they are to a temp of 86 to 93 degrees. Okay? So that is the rewarmed level that we could consider if they're still in a rest. You've been working them for over an hour or 2 hours. You could call them at that point. Now, depending on the age of the patient, depending on how long they were down, if it's like an 8-year-old, they might work them longer. They might try to get that body temp to 35 or 37 degrees, get it normal before they would stop. But, if it's, someone like me, I'm diabetic, I'm 46 years old, I got half a foot, they might be like, oh, this dude, we gave him 5 minutes, he's good, we're good to go. But those are the key factors: age, time submerged, their body temperature, the temperature of the water, and the metabolic pH. Because ultimately, what really kills the body is what is killing the cells. Okay? You've got the cell, which makes up the organ, which makes up the body. The cell dies. Enough cells die, the organ dies. Enough organs die, the body dies. Okay? And so that's ultimately what you're dealing with, is they're going to get them into the in-house. They're going to draw blood. They're going to run their blood gases. They're going to run their pH and really see what they're working with, or what the potential is for recovery. All right, so how are we going to treat that? Well, we want to correct hypoxemia and acidosis. 100% oxygen. Monitor SpO2 and end-tidal, which will tell us that number for the carbon dioxide and the oxygenation of the blood. If you're a paramedic, you're going to intubate them. If you're basic, you might put a King LT airway, maybe a combi tube in them, maybe an iGel in them to ventilate them, because they're not ventilating well on their own. And that's going to depend on how bad their hypoxia is, and basically how bad is their respiratory effort. I mean, are these guys trying to breathe at all, or are they at that point where they're in respiratory rest? They're not breathing on their own at all. So cardiac arrhythmias. This part might be a little boring for basics, because I threw this in basically for. Are you the only paramedic in the room? No. There's one. And there's the other one. Okay, so I got 3 paramedics in the room. So, cardiac arrhythmias. We're told, treat them gently, be careful with them, because they're going to go into arrest. Well, why are they going to go into arrest? Because of the acidosis and the hypoxia. So there's VFib, there's VTAC, and there's bradycardic. So after they go fast, they're going to start slowing down. When you 12 lead them, you're going to find a telltale sign of hypothermia. It's called a J wave, or an Osborne wave. And this guy named John J. Osborne apparently discovered this. The Osborne wave is a positive deflection at the J point. And it usually is most prominent in the precordial leads. So in our V leads, V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, V6. So in our V leads is where we're going to see this J point. And basically, this is what you got, paramedics. You got your ST segment there, but in your ST segment, you have another positive deflection before it came down and went off to the T wave. It looks like ST elevation, like potential MI. And and here's a good example where it looks like ST elevation, but look at that little positive deflection right there. That basically just tells you, yeah, it looks like an MI, but it doesn't look like a STEMI that I'm used to seeing. It's got that other little thing that makes the whole, it's like you look at it and your brain says, the whole EKG just doesn't look right. It looks like a STEMI, but it just doesn't quite look like a normal STEMI. Well, when you got, if all your V leads have that little extra little ear thing right there, it's going to make it not look right. So this is just a basic QRS rhythm with your ST segment right there. That's just a normal waveform basics. And this is that J point. So you look here and see this is our V leads. Here it looks basically like a normal EKG. Maybe think ST elevation, maybe. But over here, look at how weird all of a sudden the ST segment, it looks elevated like STEMI, but it's got that weird little extra little thing in there, and that's your Osborne weight. All right, so I'll try to get through this real quick. So our age groups, drowning, accidental drowning is I think it was the second highest non-intentional traumatic event outside of like accident, like car accident or something. So basically, these kids are dying from drowning a lot. For infants, most often drown in a bathtub or a bucket of water. So these are probably not going to be cold water drownings. These are going to be hypoxia drownings. They're going to be lack of oxygen drownings. May result from child abuse or neglect. Okay? We've all heard those sad stories. They've happened in Fort Wayne. Mother has got the baby in the tub with herself, and what? It gets hot, steamy bath, little music playing, and mom falls asleep with the kid in her arms. And I don't 100% blame the mom. New mother, they're tired, baby's up all night. You do get tired, but you've got to put one and one together, and it will equal two. You've got to think ahead. I'm going to get in the hot water, a little music, a little candlelight. I'm going to fall asleep. So don't put your baby in there with you, especially if you have a seizure disorder, because that doesn't end well. The drowning will probably not be cold water. Age 1 to 5, most commonly drown in swimming pools. Probably will be a cold water drowning. If it's not a heated pool, then in the winter it shouldn't have water in it, but if for whatever reason it does, it's going to be cold water. So it's going to be a cold water drowning. Probably an unattended or unsecured swim area. So here again, you got to look at your environment. This is a police case. This is a potential homicide until proven otherwise. Coroner in the back there could probably tell us exactly, what to do in this scenario. But you're going to want to preserve this scene. Yeah, you probably won't be there. If you're working the baby, you might be on the road, or they might just already be dead and you're just leaving them. But think about the environment that you're coming out of to look for possible abuse, neglect, or just carelessness. All right, 15 to 19-year-old. Most often drown in lakes, ponds, rivers, and oceans. These are cold water drownings if you're in Indiana. Now, if you're in an ocean, it's not a cold water drowning. And that would be like, you're Florida. But up here, these are your cold water drownings. And this age group has a lot of drowning situations because why? They dive in, they fracture, they get cervical spine fractures. Now they don't breathe, and if they're not found and pulled out, then they drown and they die. So cold shock response, we talked about this just a little bit before. Involuntary inhalation, if underwater, then drowning will occur. So you potentially go under, you take a deep breath because the cold water gets you, and you just kind of stay down there. But this maybe you haven't thought about. In your hypothermia or cold water drowning situation, MI is likely, why? Due to the vasoconstriction. So here you've got, you're 17, you jump in a pond, maybe not that big of a deal. But now you're 65, jumping into the lake with your grandkids. And remember, it's 80 degrees outside, but the water is under 68. So you jump in the water now. You start getting cold. You're 65, you've had a bypass. Your vessels constrict, makes your blood pressure go up, makes your heart increase more. Your oxygen demand has just shot up through the roof, and your heart can't satisfy that oxygen demand. You've got coronary artery disease, you start getting ischemia, and you have a heart attack. And potentially go into cardiac arrest. I happened to just have this exact situation in Whitley County a couple years ago. Whitley County coroner said a man appeared to have died while enjoying recreational activities at Big Cedar Lake. It was summer, Emergency crews were called Sunday afternoon to the Tri-Lakes area to report of drowning. Coroner said the man was on the lake on some type of flotation device when he suffered a medical episode. Now, what the bystanders told us was he was in the boat, jumped off the boat into the water, and literally just like a bobber, just went straight under. I mean, he came up and then just dropped. And was only in the water, they said, for like maybe 30 seconds because they saw it and they jumped in and pulled him up. And then, but they unfortunately took 5 minutes to get him probably in the boat. He was a big guy. He was like probably 280. But this is what I want you to know about this. he suffered a medical episode. The man was pronounced dead despite the best efforts of the first responders performing CPR. The coroner said it did not appear the man drowned. How's he going to know that the man didn't drown? He had no water in his lungs. Number one. Number two, bystanders said he was only underwater for 30 seconds. But he came up in cardiac arrest. And he was too. The call prompted a large response of emergency responders. And there we are. I'm right there. I just intubated the guy and was confirming lung sounds when they took that picture. But look, nice sunny day. It was warm out. Here's the lake, beautiful lake. And he died it was July 30th, so it's hot. Died of cardiac arrest, coronary event. Medical call, Mattea Park. Had this one with Northeast. Probably a couple years ago. 60-something-year-old grandmother swimming with her grandson. Grandson and witnesses saw her go under and rescued her from the water. So there's a lot of people there, and she's swimming, and all of a sudden she goes under, and either comes up face down floating or doesn't come up. I don't know which. Bystanders pulled her out of the water, began CPR for a brief period of time. On our arrival, she was alert and oriented, but severely short of breath. Her lungs were crap, and she was severely short of breath. Placed on CPAP because of the lungs, and I'm looking at her, and I'm just like, this woman was, again, not under for a very long period of time at all. And I'm like, this woman looks like crap. She's pale. And we dried her off, and she's sweaty again. And I'm like, let's 12 lead this lady. And I don't have the 12 lead, but she had a freaking STEMI like you would not believe. I was like, oh my gosh, this is, again, not a drowning. Now her lungs, she probably got water in her lungs, or she was just in massive, going into heart failure from the STEMI, but she had a heart attack playing with her son in the water. Again, cold water in the summer, but cold water. And she was an older woman, maybe had some history, I don't know. And she was having a big STEMI and went to Catholic. All right. One more scenario. I can't get to play in there. And this one, I'm sure you saw on Wayne.com because it happened yesterday. And this guy, now you know from what we've talked about, really just how lucky this guy is.
This morning when he fell into a pond, he decided he didn't need to go to the hospital.
And he still hasn't gone. It all started when Randall Deets went fishing in a pond just north of Auburn and fell through. Wayne 15's Tony Sandleben spoke with him tonight. Tony, how's he doing?
Well, Tara and Dirk,
I'm sorry, that's
your volume down by your knees.
Open the door, there's a big look.
Yeah, hopefully that'll work right there.
doing quite well. When I spoke with him tonight, he was on his way to serve food at a church event in Auburn, but his lesson is that he wants to call on the public to be safe near ice.
I went out and drilled a couple of test holes and went to go toward in the middle and hit a weak spot in the ice and fell through.
This is Randall J. Deets. He fell through ice this morning and was trapped in freezing water before being rescued by first responders.
So at that time we called 911.
I think they show some video clip from Northeast Dog Rescue in here.
Panic never set in.
You'll see here in a
Deets
second.
has someone with him and took proper safety measures. Even now, he doesn't dwell on how dramatic this morning could have been.
But it's been good.
I think they pulled a dog out. I think
it's a pretty easy afternoon, staying on the couch with a couple blankets on, but everything's good.
Deets now wants people to use this story as motivation to stay safe when fishing on the ice.
Well, it's just really important to maintain your safety factors. Always fish with a buddy. Always have a rope. Always have a cell phone with you. So if anything happens that you can't get out of, you can get help coming very quickly and help get arrive very, very quickly.
Despite it all, Deets remains appreciative of those who helped save him.
I'm glad to be here. I'm glad we have such fine EMTs and sheriff's departments and the DNR and state police were all there within a very, very short period of time, probably 2 minutes after the call went in, and I just appreciate their dedication to doing a good job.
First responders offered to take him to the hospital, but he felt fine outside of simply being cold. Now his body temperature is back to normal, and outside of a little shoulder soreness, he feels completely back to normal. Live in studio, Tony Sandley, Wing 15 News.
All right, Tony, thank you.
So, remember, that was good for, you know, because of the positive ending. But also, he was able to get a quick response from whoever pulled him out. Remember what I said, is you've got a 30-minute window of time. Now, you're not going to necessarily be able to crawl yourself out of the ice for that 30 minutes, but you potentially, if you can keep yourself under control and maybe slow your breathing down and somehow try to hug yourself and stay above water and maybe yell for help, this could be a survivable event. Now, obviously, key is getting pulled out in 5 minutes or 10 minutes versus 25 or 30 minutes. But, I mean, he didn't even go to the hospital. He refused. Yeah, he's cold, but probably in just that mild hypothermic state, that was a survivable event for him. All right, so that's basically it. You know, I told you in the beginning about my slogan I use. This is another one that I really have been driving home with my students, and that I just want to end with. To every man there comes in his lifetime that special moment when he is tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing, unique and fitted to his talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds him unprepared and unqualified for the work that would be his finest hour. Sir Winston Churchill. And again, I had no idea how many people would come, and I'm just excited for what Doug is really pushing to step up the level of training. And I am not going to stand here and say that I meet that bar, but my commitment and how you know that I'm at least driven is to try to meet that bar for you guys and for myself. And if I fail, feel free to tell me about it, and I will try to do better, or we'll find somebody that can. But with that, you know, I don't take for granted that 2 hours on a Thursday night you could be doing a lot of other stuff, like probably watching Grey's Anatomy. Is that back on yet? And so it means something that you were here. It means something to me, and I appreciate it. So with that, if you do want to get a hold of me, I am trying to create, you know, with my foot, I honestly didn't know if I would ever be back on an ambulance again, so I was trying to step up to do more training, to maybe do a training business. I've got a YouTube channel called Medic Mentor that right now has some video on it, but it's all covered because I haven't really done a lot of editing with it. But my goal is to create content, which is why I'm trying to video everything I talk about, to try to create content to put up there so that we can reach people both on site, which is important for interaction, but also for convenience and to reach even more, to do, you know, to utilize the technology that we have to try to reach more people. So look for Medic Mentor. If you have a question or have a training suggestion or just any suggestion or just want to communicate, medicmentor458@gmail.com. And with that, the rest of the time is yours to hang out here, ask questions, leave, whatever you want to do. But that's pretty much what I've got for the night.
Thank you.
You're welcome.